privilege of being elected by the Newham residents as their mayor, I am going to be delivering one of the most ambitious housing build programs where there's going to be many more homes at social rent levels where our communities can actually afford to stay in Newham, because at the moment they're being driven out.
Your party ran the borough last 100 years?
It's a long-standing Labour stronghold. It's a proud and privileged achievement. We are the birthplace of the Labour Party. Our founding, leader, Keir Hardie, was the first MP for West Ham constituency. So I very much am excited at the prospect of standing on the shoulder of historical giants. But, as was said earlier, there are many giants from our communities that I feel proud to be standing on the shoulders of in terms of breaking glass ceilings and showing young people from, our backgrounds, be you Pakistani, be you Bangladeshi, be you Indian, be you white working class, be you Black Caribbean, Black African, that if I can do it, being, having been born in Mile End Hospital, I grew up in Newham, I went to local schools. If I can achieve this level of success and this position, anyone can.
Definitely. One thing I want to add is that Rukhsana is showing time it has got your commitment you also. As a civil engineer, he's a civil engineer, and that is very possible. It's not something. And যদি হইতা 25,000, 30,000, 40,000, 100,000 অর্থাৎ তোমার যে হই লেসনে লাগে 1,000 is very doable, In fact, it will understatement. And আমি জানি রুকসানা তানের commitment is 110%. মানে সকালে উঠোই মনে হয় 6টা still on her feet. Still on her feet. And it's not just because of the elections. Her surgery is probably মানে তাই যে কাউন্সিলর সার্জারি তাই হোল্ড করই এটা মানে খুব রেগুলারলি and both মানুষের তাই দেখুন আর তাই এক্সট্রা আর তাই তো ওবি পাইছেন রুকসানা পাইছ ওবি আমি এটা তাই
British Empire OB. Okay.
Well, so what I'm saying is, why I'm bringing this point, realistically, the commitment Rukhsana is bringing is realistic. And I can vouch for this 100%. 1,000 homes is very doable. People would have said.
Historically, under the country, ethnic minority people, they supported Labour Party. Why? What?
Now that is almost the kind of main core of our claim that Rukhsana has made 3 years ago today, 12th of March, 2018. So 18, 19, 20, 21. So this is the third calendar year since she made that kind of appearance on a satellite channel. And it was 12th of March, 2018. And as he said, we shall be looking at, in some detail, at her claims and her behavior in this part on the anniversary, third anniversary of the series of claims that she made and the claims that were made, both on that particular occasion and on air on that satellite channel, which is now defunct. That is to say, it is no longer broadcasting that particular channel, but for evidence, strictly evidence, and we have shown the kind of glimpse of it, we have played this one. Now, technically, there are all kinds of facilities that can be used, but not available on this channel as we broadcast now, because the demands on getting facts right out kind of exceed, if you like, the time that is available and the need for adding facilities on this channel. We emphasize that the main purpose of this channel is to get the facts right, regardless of what the various decorations can be added or not added. Now, this is Rukhsana Fiaz, who has been promoted out of nowhere by the kind of racists in the Labour Party, and she has gone along with it. and her brainwashing is complete. Roxana Fiaz is a liar. And she approached me 2 occasions separately. Once in the Eastham Town Hall and once in the Newham Town Hall in Stratford. Both occasions she did that without me looking for her or looking at her or kind of expecting her to talk to me, because I never communicated to her before personally, or I had not known about her existence, as I said on the 14th of March 2018, when I appeared on the same channel against Robin Wales. And I said, and I'm on the record as saying, who is Roxana Fiaz? I never heard of her, effectively words to that effect. That is not to deny her right to try and have a career. That is not the same thing. What I'm saying is that she had not made any kind of impact, even in Newham, as a champion of the communities, as a Democrat, as an opponent of corruption and criminality. I'm saying this on the record on the 3rd calendar anniversary of the broadcast of that program on the 12th of March 2018. And I'm saying that Roxana Fiaz is a liar, and she is a racist stooge, and she has no morality and moral standards. She is a puppet. And all the details of her puppetry and immorality and corruption are already published online and have been submitted to the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Poverty and Human Rights, Philip Alston, who visited the UK in 2018 and who actually was present at a meeting where Roxana Fiaz corruptly and dishonestly but cunningly staged an apology to a single mother who had been abused by Newham Council's staff. And all the details are online available. Anyone who wants to know and wants to know the links to those items can send a direct message on a Kudilar Twitter account, and we shall be kind of able to send them the information. But that is all the factual request. No further details can be done because we are extremely busy and we've got a very high workload in terms of presenting and producing, researching this and other related programs and investigations, because we are doing investigations during lockdown, and it is many times harder than it would be the case if it was not lockdown. Now, Roxana Fiaz may still remain in that corrupt post, despite the fact that in Newham, just like Tower Hamlets, there has been a so-called campaign to get rid of the post. But as far as I can see, the evidence is not there that people are not campaigning anywhere near kind of seriously and kind of regularly and strongly in terms of bringing to the attention of the people in Newham the costs to ordinary people's lives and to the community of having an undemocratic, unaccountable, corrupt incumbent in the undemocratic, corrupt elected mayor post. So Roxana Fiaz may still remain there for another 10 years or whatever. And this is a disgrace, because what has been happening in Newham is that Roxana Fiaz has been allowed to get away with undemocratic, antisocial, corrupt and criminal activities and plans and scams. And this is in contrast to the claim made for her in a book that we have discussed already, Michael Gillard, and his book about the legacy of the 2012 Olympics, which allegedly exposed the corruption that went on inside the Newham Council, mainly led by a gangster that Gillard claimed to have exposed. And there are all kinds of details, and you can find the detailed statement that I have made on several occasions on this program about Gillard's book. Now, Gillard said that when he spoke to Ruxana Fiaz sometime in 2018, definitely after she got in as elected mayor in 2018, when he spoke to her, he understood that she was trying to do something. He didn't elaborate on what the something or the activities that she claimed to have been trying to do were. But he said that she was warned by gangsters. He suggested that she was warned by gangsters against doing anything. Now, if that is the case, Ruxana Fiaz, as the elected kind of post holder, should have gone public with all the details, but she hasn't. She also has not kind of published any policy statement against corruption and criminality. So all of that is completely on the record. The other thing, all of that is the fact that she hasn't done that is on the record. Now, the statement I showed on the item that was broadcast on the 12th of March 2018, in which she boasted about achievement. What she was saying was that she achieved a career ambition or goal, which was to become the mayor, or which was to aim to become the mayor, because she was speaking on a date, 12th of March 2018. It was a week before she was actually accepted or announced as the candidate for the Labour Party in Newham for the election to this corrupt post. So she was speaking hypothetically and optimistically, but her optimism was kind of vindicated because, as she said, Newham had seen the kind of Labour kind of MP or leading Labour MP from West Ham, Kia Hardy. And what she also said about, without naming anyone else, was that she was proud to be standing on the shoulders of champions and leaders in the community. Now, she didn't know who the leaders were or who the leaders are. The most likely candidate for leader, from her perspective, would be somebody harmless. That is to say, somebody who would praise her and not question her kind of corrupt character in politics. I'm not saying the corrupt characters personally. I don't know her personally, so I cannot say that. But politically, Ruxana Fiaz is a completely dishonest, corrupt careerist. Why do I say that? Because housing, she made in that same kind of interview, so-called, she made a series of claims about housing, all of which were lies, and they have been exposed as lies because she hasn't solved the housing problem. And when she staged that apology in front of the United Nations Poverty Rapporteur at a meeting in Canning Town, held in the Barking Road in Canning Town, not a council-controlled property. It's a property that belonged to a community group. And it's not a group that is critical of Ruxana Fiaz or the council. Let's add, there is no community group in Newham that is critical of Ruxana Fiaz or of Newham Council. If anyone disagrees with that, then let them do the usual thing and send us evidence of their disagreement. Even the ones that were kind of critical of Newham Council's role, especially during the 16 years of Robin Wales, we tested them. We tested their kind of stand, and we found that they were a front for the Labour Party or a front for the regime fronted by Ruxana Fiaz. And there are some racist left-wing kind of operatives that have taken over some parts of the campaigns. And they're running the campaigns and they're making usual routine noise, saying they're concerned this, that, and the other, but they're not. And these are the types of people that have, for decades, acted as the stooges and the spies for the UK state and have made sure that there is no credible opposition to the conservatives. And these are the people that are still active. And they include, I'm not saying that the only ones are the Socialist W Party. I cannot say the middle word, W Party. The middle word is an obscene word in our vocabulary. So an obscenity is actually imposed on their name because of their role and their behavior. I have known of the Socialist W Party since before it was a Socialist SWP, when it was IS. Amazing irony. And when in the 1970s it was called the International Socialists. It was as racist, as corrupt as it is now. And the SWP, or IS as it was in the 1970s, has facilitated the perpetration of a corrupt regime in Neom Council. So what we are looking at in summary, that is the corrupt Neom Council. And it is at odds with the actual reality because it is corrupt, and Roxana Fiaz is in denial of it being corrupt. She doesn't want to call it corrupt. She doesn't want to admit that it is corrupt. She doesn't want to admit that it is still corrupt. She told me in September 2018 that Robin Wales always tells lies. Of course, she denied that, but I mean, it is immaterial because everything else she has done has shown that she is a liar as well. And on the 14th of March 2018, when Robin Wales appeared on that same channel, and I spoke against him, Robin Wales said generally, because he was being faced with a challenge by Roxana Fiaz, that she wanted to be the candidate and replace him as the candidate for the Labour Party at the election for mayor post. And he did lose to her, but it was a two-horse contest, let's say. And because there was no real third candidate at any stage. And what happened in the 3 years, calendar years, since the election of Roxana Fiaz is that despite the fact that all the housing crises, all the corruption in the council have remained unchanged or kind of unaltered or unacted on, despite all of that remaining the same as they were during Robin Wales' 16 years, there is no outcry. There is no outcry that I can detect among the so-called political opposition, because the opposition is not available, allowed within the council chamber, because all the councillors are Labour Party councillors. So the opposition, or the existence of opposition, could only be found outside, out in the community. Even before the lockdown limited people's movement, the evidence of opposition to Roxana Fiaz or opposition to Neom Council as fronted by Roxana Fiaz was nil, absolutely nil. When I spoke to some so-called critics of Neom Council, I shall not name them in order to save them from embarrassment, because they are an embarrassment. They lied. When I asked them to tell me about what they found different after Fiaz was slotted in, they refused to tell me. They said, let's wait and see. That is the stupidest, most cowardly, idiotic response. Let's wait and see. Now, the people whose rights are challenged, whose safety is challenged, who are threatened with all kinds of uncertainties round the clock, they can't afford the luxury of wait and see. And that is what is wrong with the so-called opposition. And I'm looking at the iNewspaper and showing a kind of beaming face of the complete corrupt stooge, Amal Rajan. Amal Rajan has been now appointed a presenter on the Today program on BBC Radio 4. And the role that Aman Rajan has been playing as the media editor for the BBC so far has been a stooge role just like Roxana Fayaz has been playing for the racists in the Labour Party or the Labour movement and the trade unions. Now, although she said that she was completely, absolutely stupid to say that she was a role model for the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis and the Indians and the working class and the Caribbean and African origin people. What kind of role model is that? Anyone, including if Dido Harding can become a member of the House of Peers and Dido Harding can be given the budget by Boris Johnson of stealing money from the 17 billion under the so-called trace and track and whatever, then, I mean, how bad do you have to be a role model? Role model is a completely corrupt kind of thing because it is not based on the ethical engagement against the corrupt system, dishonest system, prejudice system, racist system for justice and access and fairness. It is the opposite. Role model in that context shows that she is a subservient kind of agent, apologist, explainer, backer, excuser, peddler for the corrupt status quo. And Niwam Council has been a corrupt council for decades. Long before Roxana Fayaz even left the primary school or even was born. So Roxana Fayaz today, 3 years ago today, made a lot of boasts, and all the boasts are on the record, and all the boasts have been kind of exposed as lies by her. And the other thing is that the Oldoche channel, the satellite channel on which she appeared and made the boasts, is now defunct. There are channels, satellite channels, still active. And running sort of television channels, more or less for the same kind of audience. And as far as I can find, there is no sign of any of those channels or outlets doing a follow-up or doing an anniversary examination and testing the veracity of what Roxana Fayaz said on the 12th of March 2018. Now that's not exceptional. That is normal. That is to say that people who are kind of in place, like I said about Rushnara Ali. When Rushnara Ali was elected the first time as MP for Bethnal Green and Bow, MP at the expense of Bethnal Green and Bow in May 2010, an outlet called London Bangla Press Club, a club, literally a club, and it's not a union, opposed to a trade union, and it's a club that sucks up to the likes of Lutfur Rahman. When he was in post, they lined up to suck up to him and peddle him. And there are various outlets those members of the so-called London Bangla Press Club were connected to or with, were given cash funding by Lutfur Rahman at the expense of the community and at the expense of democracy and expense of transparency and truth and accountability. One of the London Bangla Press Club names was a man called Muhammad Jubair, who was being paid by Lutfur Rahman over a 3-year period or more, allegedly as an advisor. Whatever he was advising was never made clear. While this same individual was also appearing on screen on a satellite channel, described as the satellite channel's chief reporter. Now, anyone with any common sense would know that any outlet that calls somebody its chief reporter or chief whatever must do that only by employing them full time or on an alleged full time basis. That kind of post or description cannot be made about somebody who is not full time employed by the organization. So that was one conflict of interest. The other was that this channel was paid by Lutfur Rahman independently of this individual, Jubair. And the fact that this individual was employed by that channel and was employed by Lutfur Rahman's regime, clearly second kind of layer of contradiction and conflict of interest. And no account was ever published about Lutfur Rahman's being advised by Muhammad Jubair. When I asked the council, Armed Council, to give a description of the job or the role that Muhammad Jubair was playing, I was told a series of lies and idiocies. Of course, they couldn't tell the truth because what he was doing was not there. The fact that he was being paid that money was a bribe in effect. And the bribery was to do with the fact that he was connected with this particular channel, where he was being described as the chief reporter. If somebody is described as a chief reporter, it follows logically that others who are supposedly reporters on the same channel would be deferring to this chief reporter and following the agenda or the outline or the quote lead of this chief reporter in doing their coverage. It was not a coverage, it was the covering up of the lies that Lutfur Rahman was doing in Tower Hamlets while he was in post as incumbent in the corrupt post of mayor. Now, Roxana Fiaz has not done that kind of corruption, okay? But she did begin with the corrupt move, which was identified early on, and she dropped it. And that was in May 2018, not long after she got in, that she employed as an advisor one of the most corrupt anti-Muslim racist liars in the Labour Party in Lewisham. And she was fingered, if you like, or this was fingered by Owen Jones, amongst others. So Owen Jones is regarded by Roxana Fiaz as more important in the community of Bangladeshis and Pakistanis and others in Newham, because she dropped that connection immediately. But when she dropped that racist anti-Muslim liar, she didn't understand the idiocy of her praising that idiot, that racist and that anti-Muslim. So that shows Roxana Fiaz as lacking in common sense, basic common sense. And it shows that she is not really a campaigner. She is not somebody who understands morality and ethics. And that is what has been exposed. Now, in the course of our publishing the 118-page, I think, report and giving it to Philip Alston at the United Nations, we told Newham Council that we would be using that in public kind of demands against Roxana Fiaz and the council. She didn't answer. Now that is a corrupt kind of tactic. She doesn't answer now, and then if it goes to court or if it goes to a wider public kind of forum, she can say that, well, I didn't actually have time to read it or something stupid like that. She knows that she has time, more than time to read it, because without my even knowing her, she approached me twice in exactly identical way. And she expressed, of course, dishonestly, but with the cunning expectation that I would then feel flattered or something. I didn't. I mean, I don't need her or her kind of type of success to approach me and say thank you to me. I mean, I have been a campaigner, as I said, long before she was even biologically born. And she would have no idea just how many campaigns I do and I'm doing. The fact is that it doesn't make a difference to me that she is a Pakistani or an Asian, or that Lutfur Rahman is a Bangladeshi as an Asian, or anybody else is of one ethnic group or another. In fact, it makes me more kind of determined to expose the corruption and lying and deception and dishonesty by somebody who says that they are of Pakistani or Bangladeshi or Muslim origin. Because in my objective international standard, these people have higher obligations to do the more honest kind of job. And the fact that they are not doing that is, it compounds the kind of anger and outrage against them. And that is what is happening with Roxana Fias. Now look at this lineup. Now there concept of housing crisis, she mentioned it, so I don't have to explain that. What is happening with housing, not just in Newham, but generally in boroughs like Tower Hamlets, Hackney and Newham, and of course Lewisham, where all these 4 boroughs have got executive elected mayors, but also they've got the higher than proportional, higher than average, if you like, individuals, numbers of individuals in poverty, low income, and in housing, overcrowding or lack of housing and homelessness. So when Roxana Fias says that she was going to do the housing, and this, whoever appeared with her said her promise was doable, practical and whatever, this was a lie. This was a lie, and I'll come to the lie a bit later. What happened was that there was already a very large number of people without housing and were on the waiting list. And as I have said elsewhere, that is not in this program necessarily, but other programs, and in a consistent factual way, that councils like Newham, Tower Hamlets, Hackney, and similar other, most of the London councils, let's say, except Westminster and Kensington or whatever, because those two, being conservative, follow different corrupt rules. That is what I'm saying. The mainly Labour-controlled councils in London and in other parts of England use the shortage of housing as a tool. They don't use it as evidence for needing support. They use it as a tool in order to exploit the fact that, as the equation now is, the Conservative Council, central government, is denying them funds. So the more people are shown on the housing waiting list, the stronger is the argument by the likes of Newham that they need the more money. That actually is not a truthful position. That is a dishonest contrivance. And this has been going on for a very long time. And the fact that it has been going on shows that central government and local government are crooks. They're liars. And they're lying to each other, and they're lying to the people by lying about one another and each other. So when the central government kind of housing or local government is controlled by the Labour government, like for example, it was for 3 elections, the relationship between the local councils and the central government housing department or department for communities, whatever, is not any different. It's the same hostility, animosity, and lying and complaints. Now, these complaints are not open to scrutiny by ordinary people in a decent, democratic, ethical way. These are complaints contrived by the councils and the central government departments. So it's a kind of network of liars and lying in the local councils and in the central government department. Now, when the idiot John Prescott was imposed as Deputy Prime Minister for Tony Blair, Prescott being an idiot, was useful for Blair to offload all the rubbishy kind of scams onto his shoulder. And Blair successfully messed up the democratic audit need and destroyed the housing stock in Tower Hamlets, for example, by giving Prescott the charge to go and threaten and intimidate the Tower Hamlets Council until the Tower Hamlets Council agreed to hand over billions pounds of worth of council's housing stock to gangs of criminals like the Popla Harka and the Tower Hamlets Community Housing, for example, and other smaller gangs of criminals. So that is what happened in Tower Hamlets. Now in Newham, this didn't happen. Something else happened, but with similar impact. As I said, when I appeared at short notice to challenge Robin Wales on this satellite channel that is now defunct on the 14th of March 2018, he raised the question, just like Roxana Fiaz raised the question on the question of housing on the 12th of March. Robin Wales started boasting about housing and his record on housing. I didn't raise it, he raised it. And so I asked him, based on one of his assertions, he said that it was the Tories' policy, right to buy, that caused this extra housing problem in Newham. So my reply, reasonably enough, was that he should have challenged that Tory policy. And I referred to the Magna Carta and the other rights, especially the right for the victim of dispossession, as was quoted by the Supreme Court in the judgment in January 2017. The January 2017 judgment by the Supreme Court was in the case that was brought against Jack Straw. And it was the case that the ruling contained a quotation from the Magna Carta. So I say to Robin Wales that even the Supreme Court acknowledges the English persons or the British persons' right to their home and their possessions. So that was a very powerful, strong kind of citation or reference. I said, why didn't you use that and mount the challenge in defense of the right that the Magna Carta upheld and praised and the Supreme Court actually lauded? So why didn't you go to the court, whatever the court would be appropriately at the time, to challenge the Conservatives' right to buy policy that directly created and caused the serious extra housing problem? And Robin Wales said, in answer to my question, that he was advised either the mayor in post or he was advised as the council, or he got legal advice, or the council, Newham Council got legal advice against challenging the Conservative government in court or challenging the legality of the Conservative party or government's policy. And I said, reasonably enough, give me the evidence of the advice. What I said was that give me the contents of the advice. Because as I said in part A today, my kind of legal and constitutional law campaigns have always been and are entirely based on the legality and illegality. That shows that I have had to, and I do have, kind of deeper command of the Constitution and the law than either the judges that I've dealt with or the others like licensed law trading, QCs and whatever. So therefore, every time I ask a question, including the question that I put to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was himself a kind of academic, legal academic, lecturing at the University of Southampton, briefly as a law lecturer. So I have had dealings with all range of lawyers and legal kind of persons. And this is my field. This is one of my if you like, ordinary fields of activity. So it became kind of second nature. It has become second nature. So I asked Robin Wales on the program on the 14th of March 2018 to give me the details of the legal advice he was claiming he had been given. Because if he had given me the legal advice or a copy of that, I would have shown that as an idiocy and as a completely irrelevant. And I would have said that he still could and should have gone ahead with challenging the legality of the conservative policy or the conservative government's policy. Now, he said to me that he would make a copy available to this program, that is the program that we were on. He never made any copy available because I knew that he would not. Outside, after the program was finished, I asked him again and he said he would send me that, and he gave me what he said his personal email address that he actually kind of checks or checked. He said that the email address that is called Mayor Newham, he never checked it. But the one that he gave me was a Hotmail address, either hotmail.com or hotmail.co.uk. His name and hotmail.co or hotmail.com UK. So I waited for him to send a copy of the so-called legal advice, and Wales never sent it. So I started sending emails to that address, his so-called personal address. No reply. Now that was 3 calendar years ago. I'm still talking 3 calendar years later, and Robin Wales, the liar, has not sent me that copy of the legal advice because, as I assert, he could never do that. Because no legal advice would be acceptable in any way if it said that the council could not mount a constitutional law challenge against a wrong policy, either by the conservative or the conservative government. That remains the case. And even this is regardless of who the council is owned by, that is to say, what political control or what political party or coalition controls the given council or the given central government regime. Note that. So when Roxana Fiaz made these claims herself, her version of the claims about housing, solving the housing problem, would you say this included the fact that she would have the council behave in a way that she would not have to apologize for the council staff cruelty to people who are owed service by the council? The answer is, of course, yes. But despite the fact that she staged an apology in front of Philip Alston in Newham at a meeting held in the Kennington area, she has backed council employed liars during these 3 calendar years. So I tell Roxana Fiaz that you should be ashamed of yourself and you should apologize to everyone whom you have lied to. And as for your being a role model, you should apologize for suggesting that you are a role model. Because role model is only an ethical and a moral one. Role model is not based on corruption, bribery, lying, and cunning. And the fact that Roxana Fiaz has refused to answer questions have been reiterated today, Friday, 12th of March, 2021. In communications we very much know have been sent to Newham Council, including to the mayor, including to the chief executive's department today, this afternoon, minutes before this program began to be broadcast. And the number of emails and communications calling on the facts, strictly on the facts, not on hypotheses, not on prejudice, not on the basis of any agenda whatsoever against Roxana Fias, because we haven't got a single item of agenda against Roxana Fias or against all the other liars. What we have is an agenda to get them to stop lying. That's not against them. That's for even helping them to become honest and competent. Now, Roxana Fias has said that she was kind of proud of the fact that Newham was a kind of area that had the Labour Party early years. People in the Labour Party were based in Newham and got elected from Newham. If that is the case, then she should be ashamed of kind of lying, despite making that claim that she was proud of standing on their shoulders, because they would not be happy seeing her lying by making a link with her and that tradition. There is no accountability in Newham Council. Anyone who knows Newham knows that. But anyone who doesn't know Newham, let me just say that before the lockdown, council meetings, of course, took place as normal, and you could see gathering of people. The Newham Council meeting, the ones that I have suffered for evidence, I didn't go to more than the numbers necessary. So I saw these numbers in, say, for example, the Newham Town Hall in Stratford. The meeting hall is dark. So as you enter, it's a kind of gloomy, discouraging, uninviting atmosphere, number one. And number two, the stooges that stood up, allegedly to make critical comments, were absolute disgraces. One disgrace is a white man with a long beard and who claims to be a dedicated Corbyn supporter. And the one that was actually mentioned as part of the anti-Robin Wales clique at least in the year 2017 up to 2018, up to the time that Roxana Fias got finally nominated for the Labour Party. And this man stood up. This is supposed to be the most left-wing, let's say, remember. This is supposed to be the man who is the most left-wing of all the councillors in Newham Council in this current kind of crop. And he was being completely stupid. He was not coherent, and he was not straightforward, and he was not critical. And yet his speech was billed as the critical one. So imagine the lack of life. These are people politically dead. So these deadbeats are supposed to be campaigning to have the mayor system scrapped. No way. And the so-called opposition parties in the borough of Newham, like Greens, the Lib Dems, so on, they're deader than the dead. And the Conservative Party, although it is centrally in power, is also dead. And I'll tell you why they are all dead. Because unlike in the kind of textbooks of democracy and whatever, these people, most of the Lib Dems and the Conservatives, are themselves racist and stupid. Why am I saying stupid? Because there are so many instances of bad practice, wrongdoing by Newham Council, that any kind of half intelligent local activist for the Conservative Party would be able to kind of raise this and make life very uncomfortable for Roxana Fias. But there is no discomfort for Roxana Fias on any issue whatsoever. And the council has, of course, some Bangladeshi councillors, some Pakistani councillors. So let's say the council has people of Bangladeshi origin, Pakistani origin, Indian origin, and some Caribbean and African origin. Okay. And of course, there are some Western European people or European people. Now, all of them, as I said about that man with the long beard, all of them are politically dead. It is a disgrace to watch them. They're sitting there. There is nothing coming out of the mouth. And anyone who has seen Rukhsana Fia speak will know that she is a crafty, very crafty person, and she speaks with a mechanical, with a robotic kind of delivery. She never belonged to the community. She never belonged with the community. When she approached me the second time, I said to her that you should sit down with me. Now imagine, she approached me. I didn't approach her. Because I thought that if she really meant to kind of thank me for holding her to account, this is the line that she peddled when she approached me the second time as well, as she had done the first time. I said that she should sit down with me and I shall address some of the issues that she should address. I didn't say what, but she said to that question or advice, I was actually advising her. She said, what was the meeting to be under? Was it under Labour Party or was it under some kind of thing? There was no Labour Party need or party need there at all. It was as a person who is in that post and is of course failing. And she should have welcomed me, not because I needed her to welcome me whatsoever. I have never, ever in my whole life needed anyone in post or not post to welcome me or give me a kind of spot. I have my own spot all the time. And these are more authentic, more rigorous, and more powerful than anything that any of her ilk can ever dream to give me. What she should have done is she should have actually lived up to her kind of cunning praise for me. And she should have sat down with me. Instead, she looked for any kind of excuse to avoid sitting down with me. What could I do? The worst I could do would have been to tell her that she was doing wrong things. I couldn't do anything more than that, anything worse than that. But actually, if she listened, she would have made herself very credible indeed, but she didn't. And this is not her for the first time. I have advised morons and idiots and careerists of all kinds, from all backgrounds. And I found the same ingratitude and stupidity, including in the behavior of Lutfur Rahman, which I'll come to in due course again. But back to Rukhsana Fia's. When I asked her to sit down with me, and she gave me the stupid question as to under what, Labour Party, branch or Newham Council or whatever, some kind, I had to create some reference in terms of other people she respects. She didn't obviously respect me. And by expressing her praise, so-called, for the second time, what she was doing, she was not showing me respect or acknowledgement or kind of gratitude. She was trying to get me not to attack her. Think about the distinction. Because somebody must have told her that one of the people she should be kind of careful about was me. Whoever said that, I don't know, but somebody said that, obviously. That explains the reason why twice in 2 months or 3 months, she approached me from behind and started by thanking me. Notice that. I had not made any communication to her, and I had not said anything to her about anything. Physically, I was there, roundabout where she was outside the council or outside the meeting. And she decided to start thanking me from behind. And if somebody close behind you says things that are thanking you, then you obviously turn around and look who is talking, because you are not aware until that time of being in conversation with anyone. And I wasn't. And it wasn't a long conversation the second time, but she did that. Now, whoever told her who I was obviously told her something that influenced her enough to do that, to approach me. Now, why would she approach me like that and then fail to sit down with me and listen to me? Doesn't it look odd? Yes, it does. And that gives away the dishonest person that she is. As I said, even if we sat down half an hour, 20 minutes, whatever, I was not going to take away anything that she has achieved. Remember that interview she gave on the 12th of March 2018, that she had achieved so much by being a candidate or about to be the mayor. I mean, she thought that that was an achievement. I don't think that is an achievement at all. I think that her being a mayor or any of those people being MPs or whatever are career steps. That is to say, they get the money, they get the kind of pad, they get the house, they get all this stuff. Now the question is, the test is, what do they do? What do they deliver to the people? People are not peripheral. People are not secondary. The people, the electors, the constituencies, the communities are the most important kind of topic and the subject to address by anyone in elected post. That makes the difference. That is the achievement. If they make the delivery to the people, and if they keep absolutely engaged to the needs of the people, that is the beginning of the achievement route. What Rukhsana Fiaz does is the opposite. What Lutfur Rahman did is the opposite. And for enlightenment of the corruption by Rukhsana Fiaz, I shall cite again Lutfur Rahman's corrupt behavior. Now, Lutfur Rahman completely misunderstood the community, including me. That was his undoing. Because he and the other crooks that have been supporting him in the community, in the name of the community, have been corrupt and engaged in political robbery of the community's resources. And the biggest resource of the community is the credibility that I have created for the community, that is the Bangladeshis in the UK, in the context. Without my campaigning activities, there is nothing. And I say that this simply. Let anyone with evidence dispute this, and I shall be quite happy to go through the evidence. When we defeated the Crossrail plot in 2007-8, and the campaign was completely opposed by Lutfur Rahman's kind of mentors and kind of backers, the political power and influence that existed in the electorate became undeniable. And that is what they abused and exploited. Did they think that I didn't notice that? Because when I said no to the elected mayor post, I was aware of the fact that all the very hard work that had created the respectful kind of image of the Bangladeshis in Tower Hamlets and of the Bangladeshis from Tower Hamlets, because the impact proliferated into other parts of Bangladeshi settlement in the UK. And by definition, Asian settlement, because what we did was absolutely, perfectly, constitutionally, legal and ethical and democratically first class. So what these crooks did was to prod him, Lutfur Rahman, for mayor. And they set about destroying the image of the Bangladeshi community and making it a synonym for crooks and liars and misfits, politically misfits, unfit for purpose, and so on. That is the image against the image of the Khudilar campaign. Think about the two. And we have to defend the community for the present population and for the future populations on every level. And when the community in Neom kind of supported Roxana Fiers, whatever the kind of lures and whatever charm offensive she mounted, they did that because they thought that being of the Pakistani kind of background, she would understand the needs of the people in the wider context and she would deliver. And that she would make the Pakistanis, as far as the Pakistanis were concerned, proud that they had a member of their community who delivered a decent kind of regime as mayor. And by kind of co-option, the Pakistanis were helped by the Bangladeshis and the Caribbeans and others in the community. Now, all of them have been betrayed and let down by Roxana Fiers. And the councillors that are imposed in Neom, including from all those backgrounds that I've listed earlier, are behaving like complete dead people. Because remember what we are talking about. Neom, one of the 32 boroughs in London, has got a population that contains too many people who are in poverty, low income, and deprivation, and denied access to fairness and access to freedom. Even before the lockdown, people who are not free, and there is no equality, there is no real say, there is no tolerance. That is number one. Number two is too many young people, mainly from the African Caribbean backgrounds, are involved in internecine, that is crime within the communities. And crime including serious violence, including murders. These are not minor issues. These are serious issues, but this can be addressed and this can be kind of reversed. But this cannot be reversed by giving priority to careers and opportunities for individual careers, which is what Roxana Fiers is doing. And thirdly, the community's energy, the potential for positive contribution by members of the community who are not either councillors or MPs, or they're not bothered about becoming councillors or MPs, but are bothered about finding a proper kind of ventilation for too many grievances and wrongdoings that are going on at various levels. And there is no proper platform to ventilate them, let alone get them repaired. And there is no leadership available in the community, despite the potential, to address the wrongdoing without having to resort to huge sums of money. The biggest wealth is the human wealth, the goodwill, and the people's kind of preparedness to give for free the best they have. And that's not being tapped. And that cannot be tapped by somebody who is crooked, who is corrupt, and who is in the hands of the racists for approval. Everything Roxana Fiers says and spews are scripted by racists or scripted to suit the racists. These are not based on the universal traditions of generosity and of charity that are rooted in the subcontinent, all across the subcontinent, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. Think about what I'm saying. So when she said that she had achieved something, she was speaking darkness. She had not achieved anything. And now, 3 years on, she has failed, and she has been failing by keeping every liar in post and by denying every obligation that she has been under a duty to deliver on. And all these claims I'm making are contained in documentary, evidential facts and outstanding claims, consolidated claims, all outstanding against Roxana Fiaz and Roxana Fiaz fronted Neom Council of crooks and liars and deniers. And I don't believe that John Gray, the Welsh racist who became her mentor, is going to make the necessary difference, despite his pretentious kind of staging of the corrupt kind of thing that he resigned from the post of being deputy mayor because he wanted to campaign against the mayor system. I have not heard anything about that so-called campaign in months or ever. So Roxana Fiaz is lying. Daniel Fenwick, the so-called monitoring officer, is a liar. And I say it on the record, come on, Daniel. Take legal action openly and transparently. Don't take a sneaky action, but take a straightforward legal action challenging me for calling you a liar. Daniel Fenwick is a liar. Roxana Fiaz is being advised by this liar. And this liar should not have been in the post. He should have been sacked years ago. The fact that she has kept him means that Michael Gillard was lying for her. Because Gillard said that Fiaz has been threatened by gangsters. That cannot happen. If she has been threatened, then let her make it public. Let Fenwick start the proceedings against the gangsters. Why hasn't he? And these are too many questions, and no councillor in Neom is asking these questions, either on the council or outside in the public. And there is no evidence in the so-called local paper that the racist criminal Tom Duncan founded Neom Recorder. The criminal is gone, but the Neom Recorder's criminal stupidity and collusion and complicity with the Neom Crooked Council continues. So what is happening with the various campaigns that she says she's doing? First of all, Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan gave her more than £100 million of the Greater London Assembly's money in order to kind of give her a solid start with the funding. Sadiq Khan didn't give anything like that money to any other council across London at all. So there may be questions as to why he gave Roxana Fiaz that much money. And it's clearly to kind of make her claim that she has got this as an achievement of her abilities and skills or whatever. It isn't. It's Sadiq Khan, a very dishonest person, giving her that money under housing. Now let's examine that. That is, apparently she's getting the biggest single amount of grant on housing from the Mayor of London, so-called. And that automatically spells good news. It's not. Because it is to do with, notice the phrase she uses, And I'll come to that so that anyone who doesn't understand or anyone who has missed the complexity of the statement, the language she has used, will get it very clear. The 100 million pounds or the 109 million pounds, whatever it is, that Sadiq Khan gave to Neom Council for house building, on the face of it, this looks very good because it means that she has got enough money to start a very good, viable program of house building. But you see, the fact is that Sadiq Khan is secretly part of the house building contractors' crooked conglomerations or connections. That's why the house building is the phrase she used on the 12th of March 2018, not the housing allocation, the housing and the tenancies and the housing service, which is more important than building houses. It may sound contradictory, but it isn't. Because in London, including Newham, and let me say again, house building is less important for solving the housing crisis than the housing policies and practices of the local councils. Let's start the explanation. Say there are, let's say, 1,000 empty properties in Newham. If there are 1,000 empty properties, you can calculate how much each property would be worth, or each of the property to build anew, fresh, how much it would be. And the 100 million pounds that Sadiq Khan has allocated for house building won't build a lot of housing. And to solve the housing corruption and defect by Newham Council, it would save more than 100 million pounds. Think about that. Because first of all, there are too many empty properties right across Newham. And Newham Council has not published the truthful data or statistics or any statistics about the empty properties. And there are other properties that are not necessarily empty, but because of the ownership and the landlord's control and abuse, there are as many other properties that can be made available. Now, all of that requires Newham Council to operate an honest and fair housing policy so that the genuinely in need emergency kind of people without any housing now is singles and families, or the use of the word family is also very misleading, because at least 1/3 of the people in need of housing are single. They have no family, no children. And to lumber them with families is completely misleading and untruthful and dishonest, because the statistics applying to somebody who is single is not the same statistics that applies to people with family. That is, family by definition, most of the families by definition have got 3 persons or more. So the housing crisis that Newham has had, or Newham has maintained, as I said, as tool for negotiation with the central government, can be solved by being honest and by using the housing resource honestly. Roxana Fiaz is not an honest politician, and she is not behaving honestly. Because, for example, shortly after she became incumbent in that corrupt post, she was given a platform to address mainly white people and mainly bourgeois people and mainly corrupt people, nothing to do with local Newham population. And she addressed a kind of gathering in Westminster. What does it show? Because she was on the cover of it, she was doing that to appeal for Newham to be helped by the wealthier, etc. They didn't. It was part of a lobby which has got a branch in Newham itself. It was nothing to do with democracy, nothing to do with the local community, and so on. And if I list all this stuff, it will be too long a list. Roxana Fayaz is a stooge for racists, and she is not representative of the diverse community that is Newham. She most certainly is not. And she has contempt for people of Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Indian origins and backgrounds. None of her kind of active mentors or kind of advisors is from those backgrounds. And none of the Asian councillors is in a leading position at all. Anyone who may be occupying a position as deputy or whatever is serving her, literally serving her as the political mistress. Remember, I'm saying political mistress, so don't confuse this with any other mistress. I'm not saying that. I don't know anything about her personally, so I'm not saying that. Essentially, she's a hypocrite and she's a liar and she's unfit for purpose on all grounds. And the campaign to get rid of that post is weak, and so it will fail. So by default, she may stay in there. And if she is replaced by somebody else, that won't make any difference for the better government that Newham people deserve. And we shall come back to Roxana Fayaz about the contents of the rest of the bit that she spoke or spewed, dated the 12th of March 2018. We shall put an end to this part at this stage, which is 16:12 hours GMT on Friday, the 12th of March 2021.